at about almost 3,800 attendees in the space. And so I think with that being said, let's go ahead and get started here. How does that sound, Nora and Nadine? That feel good? Okay, great. Okay, folks, welcome. You are at a Marshal training as part of No Planning for the No King's Day on June 14th, coming up in just a couple days here. My name is Nora. I work with Indivisible, and I'm joined by Nor and Nadine, who will introduce themselves in just a moment. I'm just gonna do some real quick housekeeping, and then I'll pass the mic to them. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Just a couple of things. So, hey, the chat is fast and furious right now because that's how we like to start things off. We are going to turn the chat off for the majority of tonight. We'll turn it back on sometimes when the facilitators have specific prompts, things they want to hear from practicing together. But just so you know, it's not personal. It's just so we can keep things clear and focused. That said, we do have the Q&A tool turned on, so you can send questions to the Q&A. Because there are literally thousands of people here tonight, there won't be any way for us to answer all of your questions, but we will be tracking the questions that are coming through, responding to some of them along the way, and then saving others for a few minutes of live Q&A at the end. The resources, the links, the other tools that we send out in the chat along the way are going to be a great, great resource for you to get some of your questions answered. And also, many of the questions that we tend to have in this space don't have a simple, easy answer. So just expecting that some of it is going to be about the context and process that you're in with other folks that you organize with, and your safety plans will be part of that too. And speaking of which, when we do have the chat on, as well as in the Q&A, just want to invite everybody to keep the conversation focused and really try to support each other. We're 3 days out from a really major moment. So now's not the time to get into beef about tiny things. We want to come together across differences or disagreements we may have in this moment and focus on what our shared outcome is. And with that being said, let me go ahead and pass the mic over to Nadine and Noor. Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you, Nora. And thank you for everyone at Indivisible and the whole No Kings Coalition for having us tonight. Mary, Eunice, Carly, everybody on the back end of this as well. So yeah, my name's Nadine and I use she, her pronouns. I'm part of a crew called Beautiful Trouble. We have a lot of resources online at beautifultrouble.org, some of them in 9 languages. We encourage you to take advantage of that and visit at another time after this workshop. I'm really thrilled to have Nor with me here today. Both of us are calling in from Anacostan or Nakacheng territory, and I'm going to turn it over to Nor to say hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Indivisible, and the entire No Kings Coalition crew. My name is Noor. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a DC area trainer, activist, and facilitator. And I'm so delighted to be able to support you all in preparing for this weekend's activities. Nadine, I believe you're going to take us through the agenda, so I will pass it back to you.
Yeah, let's do that. That's great. So we can go to the next slide, I think, and even the next one after that, since you already met us. For those folks who'd like to know what we're doing in the next 60 minutes, we're going to be doing a little bit of context setting and grounding. We're going to dive into conflict, both how we deal with it personally and how we deal with it as a community through Marshal or peacekeeping teams. We'll share a lot of resources and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. But there will be moments where we do some pausing for interactivity. So if you're with other people, and we hope a lot of you are, you'll be able to practice with each other. If you're by yourself, we're going to invite you to write things down or maybe call someone up on the phone. You'll have a minute or two, or maybe even enlist a housemate or maybe your pet cat or dog to role play with you. Whatever can help make these things more real and give you more information about how you can show up and make the events this weekend and ongoing much more effective towards the world that we want, that takes better care of all of us. So we're going to jump right in. Then we're going to go to a poll to see who's on the call. It'll take about a minute or two to see who's here. Hopefully we can activate the poll. And this is really asking you about your experience with marshaling or peacekeeping. So you'll see that there are 5 questions. One of them says, what kind of experience do you have with being a marshal or peacekeeper at protests and demonstrations? Are you very experienced? Do you have a little bit of experience, but you're very comfortable? Maybe you've got a lot of protest experience, but you've never been a marshal or a peacekeeper. Totally okay. Maybe you've done it a couple times. You're still learning a lot. maybe this is your first time in a Marshal Peacekeeper role. So we're seeing the results come in, which is really awesome. Looks like we have a lot of new folks to the Marshal Peacekeeper role. We're really excited that you've decided to step in. It's a great moment to learn these skills and to show up for your community. This is great. And I believe, yeah, we have almost 4,000 people on this call, so we're going to give it another minute. And it looks like there's plenty of experience here as well. Not all of it with Marshal and Peacekeepers, but a lot of people have experience being out and doing protests and demonstrations. So that's really great. Excellent. All right, we'll give you another 1 or 2 seconds to answer the poll. Excellent. I think this is really great. We have, you know, a little bit of a bell curve going on, plus the folks who are in the first time role, which is really, we're excited. That's awesome to show up and actually be in a role, and in particular this role for public protests and expanding our civil society experiences. All right, so let's close it and end the poll and look at the results. So you can see here that we have a good number of folks who are very experienced and have organized safety teams. We have people who are generally comfortable as Marshal and Peacekeepers. They haven't done leadership before. And we have a lot of protest experience, not as Marshals and Peacekeepers, but this is a significant number of us. Some people are still learning a lot, and there's a whole crew of people, almost half of us actually. This is our first time role for Marshal and Peacekeeper. So that's great. We're really welcoming everybody here and looking forward to reviewing stuff with you. Yeah, excellent. All right, so let's keep going. I'll pass it over to Noor for a minute. We'll do a little bit of work together.
Thank you, Nadine. And so glad that we have so many people for whom this is sort of a learning experience. You're ready to jump into it, and you're really stepping into your power and your role in this moment. Thank you so much for sharing that. So before we get started, we want to ground ourselves in why we're here, what brings us here, what brings you all to this call on a Wednesday evening, or late afternoon, depending on where you're at. So I'm going to invite folks, if you are comfortable, to just bring yourself to a place where you can take a deep breath, maybe a few deep breaths, close your eyes. If you would like to do so, sort of ground yourself in this moment. A really great question to ask yourself is, what do you want people to know about when it comes to your role in this moment? Maybe you're a parent or a grandparent, or you have, younger people in your life. When, we fast forward a few decades from now, and you might be in a conversation with them where they're asking, hey, what were you doing, in June 2025? What were you doing then? Tell us about it. So I just invite you all to reflect on that question and what your answer may be if somebody who cares about you or who you care about asks you to share that. What would you be proud of sharing back with them? And I think for each of you, for the almost 4,000 people that are here on this call, you can tell them that you were here getting prepared, getting ready to mobilize, getting ready to support thousands and thousands of other people, and also stepping into their power in the same way. So just take a minute to write that down. Maybe you can put a note in your pocket before you head onto the streets this weekend. But thank you all for reflecting on that. And Nadine, I will pass it back to you to continue sort of shaping us in this moment.
Thank you, Noor. I really always appreciate even a moment or two of breathing with folks and centering ourselves and remembering why we're here. And I'm going to take it right back into the real situation that we're facing. We are in a situation where we have an authoritarian takeover or shrinking civil society space. There is great risk of taking action, but the risk of doing nothing is even greater. And so we have this real need for courage and bravery, for building our support systems, for building our collective capacity to take action together. So that one of their main tools is to make us scared, right? To put fear into our hearts. And a normal response often includes freezing, not knowing what to do, running away, we call it flight, fawning, which is obeying in advance, something else we really don't want to do with authoritarians. And sometimes people even fight. And we know that we can be much more effective if we embrace strategic nonviolent action. So it's really important that we address the fear that the authoritarians are trying to rule us with by facing the problems together. And we can do that by training together and preparing. So we are happy to be on this call tonight with all of you preparing for this work. And I'll pass it right back so we can dive in. We can open up the slide deck again. And then we'll open the chat.
Great. Thank you, Nadine. So want to raise this question for you all and invite you to drop your answer in the chat. When you think of people power or nonviolent action, what movements, campaigns come to mind? If that's too much to even grapple with, right? Backtrack and think about headline that you saw or something you saw on TV and you were like, wow, that is really powerful. That is incredible. What was that? Paint that picture for us, pop it in the chat, and just lifting up a number of responses that are trickling in, seeing a lot about the civil rights movement, seeing a lot about boycotts, talking about George Floyd. People are talking about the anti-nuclear the resistance and some of those movements and anti-war movements. People are talking about Rosa Parks. People are talking about Harriet Tubman. There's a whole lot of incredible examples that are being dropped in the chat right now.
Kind of amazing. I wouldn't say it's a trickle, nor it's a flood, man.
It is a flood, not a trickle. It is a flood. It is almost 4,000 people sharing really, really powerful images and examples. And also just want to raise that people are not only talking about sort of mass mobilizations and rallies and protests, but also talking about series of actions that really built upon each other. So just, bringing all of that power, all of that history, and reminding us that we stand on legacies upon legacies from around this world, and that shape what we're doing every single day. Is there anything, Nadine, that you're seeing that you want to lift up aside from what I've named?
I love the fact that it spans every continent, every community, a real ancient history to the current day. I saw Greta Thunberg in there. I mean, I really want people to own the fact that we know how to do this, that our people have always done it, and it's been incredibly powerful. So really, really appreciate folks sharing their wisdom.
Nadine, is there anything else that you're seeing that something that's really coming across to me is that there are examples of actions that perhaps had been planned for a really long time that took a lot of prep. And then there's also a little bit of spontaneity. And I was wondering if you're seeing that and if you have any reflections on sort of like that entire spectrum, right, of possibility.
Yeah, one of the things that we can note is that one of the reasons why nonviolent social movements are basically twice as effective as movements that incorporate violence against people is because they have a big tent. And a lot of these are really size does matter. Many, many people are involved because many people don't want to hurt each other or risk being hurt themselves. So this commitment to strategic nonviolent action has been very helpful. And it also allows people, we find that one of the reasons these groups are often successful is they commit to planning. They do training, they do innovative and actions, and they can plan escalation. So they can onboard people and then do the next step. As was mentioned earlier, this is really important that we make sure that we bring people along with us. So I think what we should do is close the chat. Maybe it's already closed. I can't tell. There's so much going on. And we're going to move to the next slide because we are about to do our first little exercise. And we can go to the next slide even. So I'm going to, or maybe not. Let's go back. There it is. All right, so we're going to do a series of role plays. We're going to invite those of you who are with other people to do this with the other person that's with you. Grab someone if you don't have them. If you're by yourself, please take a minute and think about what you would say out loud, what you would do with your body, how you would react, and write it down, take some notes. Then we'll open the chat up at the end to share. It's going to be pretty quick, 2 minutes. All right. So in this particular instance, the first role play is taking place at a No Kings rally in a lovely park near a local government building. Might sound familiar to some of you. It's a two-person role play, basically. One of you will play an upset, distressed person, came to the event, but is really angry that more is not being done and is bothering other people around them, making a little scene. The other person is going to be a marshal or peacekeeper, part of a bigger safety team, and they're going to try to deal with this situation, see if they can calm that person down a little bit or figure out what's going on. Does that make sense? Can we have some thumbs up in the responses that this little role play makes sense? Excellent. And Nor and I are actually going to do a 2-second modeling of this little practice session, so you get the sense of what we mean. So, Nora, what do you want to start?
Yes, let's do it. God, I can't believe that I'm here again.
At about almost
All I
3,800.
constantly do is come to these protests, come to these rallies at the same building every
Hey,
time. See the
hey, how are you?
circle.
Are
I just
what?
want to be
I'd
here.
really love to hear what you're talking about. My name's
I,
Nadine. What are you upset about?
I don't understand why you can't hear what I'm saying, Nadine. I appreciate you coming up and asking me, but I've already said what's bothering me. I'm
So
just
can
tired.
I, would you mind telling me directly, like it's a little loud here, so maybe we can just step over here and we
I'm
can talk
happy
for
to
a minute?
walk with you, but I don't think that you will have the answers that I need, which is I'm tired of going to these things again and
Yeah,
again. Can you hear me
I
now?
totally,
Am I
yeah, I
loud
hear you.
now?
I totally hear you. So let's take a walk for a minute and tell me a little more and while other people can listen to the rally.
I'm happy to do that, Nadine. Thank you for asking.
All right. Thank you, Nora, for playing with me. So you can see, maybe we could open the chat up. And what did I try? And what happened? See if the chat's open. What did I try to do? What did you see? I moved her away. I distracted her. I listened. Yeah, I diffused it. Excellent. Right. Okay, great. So people are all on it. So let's close the chat. You all are really on it, which is so great. And we're going to set the timer at 2 minutes. And we're going to ask you to do this role play with someone else or call them up on the phone or do it with somebody in your immediate vicinity or write it down. And we'll check back in a minute. All right, let's hit that 2-minute button and go. All right, we only have a few more seconds. right? Excellent. Thank you for hopefully diving in and thinking about this. We're going to open the chat up and let's hear what you did and what you tried. How did that feel? Whether you were the person who was upset or whether you were the person trying to calm them down, how did it go? Your husband and I did it. People calm down. Active listening. Super awkward. Wonder why it was awkward. Do you need practice or you were just haven't done it in a while? Excellent. You relocated. You notice anything you want to do? Call out, Nor?
Yeah, some people mentioned jokes. They said starting a conversation. Some people mentioned distraction. And even if you don't necessarily agree, showing some interest or care, being like, oh, that's really interesting. I would love to hear more about it. Right. So I think people are naming some really critical things. You don't have to be 100% earnest in your approach. It just has to make sense for that moment.
Yeah, a lot of validation, a lot of empathy. So let's go to the next one. We have another little role play, and then we're going to do a bigger debrief. Um, let's go to the next one. There we go. And Nor, you want to intro it?
Yeah, okay. So we are this one might also be familiar for you all. We're at another No Kings rally. We're also in a park, and one of you is a opponent, counter protester, perhaps right wing, who is yelling and harassing people that are gathered for the event, and the other person is a marshal or peacekeeper. So that is what the role play is. And Nadine, do you want me to be the counter protester or the marshal?
I think we don't need to role play. I think they're good. So I
Yeah,
think we could
sounds
press
good.
go for 2 minutes.
Let's do it.
All right, it's time to bring it on home. I hope you all put a lot into this so you could get information out. Excellent. All right. So we can once again forward the slide deck. We're going to do a quick debrief. Yep, the chat's open, it looks like. So it is great. It's okay to have the chat open, hoping that we can bring it together to think about what you can use when you're actually on the street or out in public, or maybe even with your family members. So whenever whenever you find yourself in a situation, the first thing that you want to do is assess. We're going to share a little mnemonic here, ABCDs, so that you can think about a whole process that you can put in place really quickly. First thing is assess, identify the scene, identify the conflict. The second thing you might do is breathe, right? And we mean this in a way to ground. How do you ground yourself? In fact, the chat's open. Why don't you all put in the chat, what do you do to ground yourself or calm yourself down? Because it's generally true that people who are grounded make better decisions. There's very few of us that make better decisions when we're all stressed out. Yeah. What do we see? We see people breathing. We people taking steps away. We people see people slowing down. Excellent.
Yeah, people talking about taking a breath, let's, just checking where their body is, thinking about their shoulders and their tummy, perhaps doing a breath that works for you and count to 10, looking at your surroundings, doing a body scan.
This is all great. Yeah, this is all great. And one thing I will add is that the physiology of taking a breath in and then having a longer exhale will tell your body to calm down. So count to 2 or 3 for an in breath and let it out for 3 or 4 or 5, and you will help yourself physiologically calm down. And the last thing, and the most important thing of the ABCs, is choose. Everything we do, no matter what it is, gives us a choice. So we have a choice of whether we get involved and how we show up. As many people said, the first line of defense for de-escalation might be listening. And many people mentioned it, and many people, it's accessible to everyone. Active listening, thinking about leaning in, nodding, saying, mm-hmm, showing that you're listening is quite different, in fact, than, being deadly silent, which could be escalative rather than de-escalative. So we're going to talk a little bit about the things that we use to do de-escalation. We can use these whether we're at home or whether we're on the street with people who are upset, or if people who are trying to incite others to do things. So let's go. And we have Ian here because sometimes as activists and organizers, we're not always doing the thing that would completely de-escalate. So for example, somebody might ask us to move the security guard, and we may say, no, actually we have a permit and we're going to stay here. And that might be considered an escalated thing, but it is something that we have our right to do. We have a right to be out in public. We have a right to exercise our First Amendment rights. So this is important for thinking about our goals. So let's go to the next slide and think about all the things that we can do. So the first one is a direct intervention, right? We talked about, and people mentioned, I think Nor mentioned reading it, that people have open, non-threatening body language. Your hands are empty and visible. They're not behind your back. They're not in your pockets. They're not holding something threatening. We talked about lowering the volume. Slowing it down can also be very relaxing, or slow or calming to people. And for one thing that's really important is don't touch angry people, particularly those who have weapons or police. There's pretty much no rules to this. It's all very context specific, except for this one thing. Don't touch police, police cars, police bikes, police dogs, police horses. This can all seem to be an assault on a police officer. We do not want to go into that territory at all. And we know that angry people in general do not like to be touched. All right. You could also use appropriate content. Some people mentioned humor. Some people mentioned singing or chanting. If you do them in the right way, it could be calming, a calming influence. I'll pass it to you, Nor, for the next D.
Yeah, delay, wait it out. Just because something is happening does not mean that you need to react immediately. If it does not feel like it is urgent, as an example, a time that I've delayed is when I see somebody just having prolonged sort of agitation from the side of a protest, right? You know that they're there, they're going to be there a long time. They might have some music that they're playing over you. You might want to take a few minutes to really think through why they're here and what the best outcome would be. As an example, if you and your crew is about to leave the site, right? You might think about how to leave in a way that strategically sort of isolates these people, or you might send some people from your Marshal team to talk to them beforehand and sort of guide other people away. So how can you use time to your advantage if that is an option and it is not an immediate sort of threat for you all to deal with? So delay, use time to your benefit. And I'll pass it back to you, Nadine, around distract, one of the best ones to use in my.
Or how about them Knicks or something like this, right? Use something appropriate that can, change the contour of the dialogue that you're having, possibly. It could also be something physical. You could, by mistake, drop your backpack or dump your coffee out or spill something. Think about what might be helpful to you in distracting and diverting a negative thing from going on. And we've got delegate. What's delegate, Nor?
Oh my goodness. So you are all here in mass numbers because a lot of you are working together, right? A lot of you are maybe knowing each other and meeting each other for the first time. So think about who you have on your side, right? As you're sort of setting up your Marshal teams, it is important to think about the team, right? Who is the person who is closest to you? Do you know their name? How are you communicating with them? And when you do have an agitator or an incident that you need to respond to, who are you taking with you, right? So think about that buddy system. You also want to think about, if you yourself are maybe feeling uncomfortable and when you're in the previous slide, we went through some of the body scans and the self-assessment you can do about how you're feeling. If you are not feeling 100% ready, right, to deal with that incident or tackle it for whatever reason it might be, think about who you can bring in from your team and deputize and work together. Let's talk about distance, Nadine.
Yep, we should, if you can, put space between you and the problem. Same thing as delay, and Noor talked about it. If you can move away, if you can go somewhere else, if you can move the problem away, can all be really helpful. And last but not least,
document, right? So I'm sure that all of you have thought about this before. What is your documentation plan for the rally itself? But also, how can you use documentation as a D to bring some of the escalation down? So you can let people know that you're filming. You can just bring your phone out and even if you're not filming, something you could do is pretend like you're filming, right? There is nothing that gets people more attuned to what they're saying than knowing that it might catch up with them later. Of course, none of these work for everybody and for every incident, but these 6Ds are ones that you can play around with and keep in your back pocket as you're sort of going through one after the other or using them together. Nadine, anything else that you would add about any of these 6Ds?
and while we're at it, like some of these can both be escalative and de-escalative. So if you're documenting too close to somebody, they might grab your phone and they might smash it. If you're able to live stream or upload while you're filming, then you can make sure that you have a recording of it no matter what happens to your phone. So learning how to do that. If you're on this call and you don't know how to swipe right from your home screen to get to your camera, please ask someone to show you how to do that so you can do it quickly. And as well, while we're on the topic, we really recommend taking biometrics off of your phone when you're out in public. That means you should not have facial recognition or thumbprint opening on your phone. Instead, use a code, because if something were to happen to you, you were lying on the ground, somebody could pick up your phone, the police could open your phone with your biometrics at the very least. And there's lots of other reasons why you might want to make sure you have, particularly if you're going out to a protest, some better controls on your phone. You might turn off your Bluetooth and really think about putting on a code that is not compellable. So keep your information secure and safe. All right. So this is a handout. We'll make we have a link for it. We will share it. It's at the beautifultrouble.org/fuel FUEL site, along with other handouts that we will share with you. And it is also, I believe, in the Peacekeeper Marshal workbook that we really encourage people to take a look at. So we can drop the link of that again in the chat, and we will share it again at the end as well. So let's go to the next slide. I think we're going to move right on. So we're going to do one more thought break here, one more practice session, if you will. And this is a particular scenario, right? We know that you'll be active in teams of folks who are going out as marshals, or some of you will be called peacekeepers. And we're really interested in you thinking about what the potential issues or threats might be and how you might handle that situation. Thinking about preparing in advance is going to be really helpful to you. So we have identified two particular things here, hecklers and inciters. And a heckler would be somebody who's, a counter protester, an opposition person, yelling maybe at people who are participating in the rally. And it is possible that our people might end up yelling back, and the whole thing might get very heated. So let's think about, if you want to talk about this situation, what might you do to de-escalate that or keep that from happening in the first place? If you'd rather, you could talk about somebody who's out to incite violent action. And it could be somebody on our side, actually. It could be somebody whose side where it's not quite clear, but maybe they even have some things with them, like paint balloons or rocks, so that they can encourage other people to throw things. We'd love it. We're going to give you 3 minutes. Again, if you're by yourself, take some notes. Think about what would make it work. If you're with other people, have a conversation about what's more likely for you to have to deal with. We know that there are other situations, like maybe it'll be very hot, or maybe the weather will be inappropriate for having a comfortable rally. So think about dressing in layers, think about bringing appropriate things. But in this case, we'd love you to dig in a little bit to figure out what could you do to prepare to deal with hecklers or inciters in these circumstances. Everybody ready for this? It's only going to be 3 minutes. All right, let's jump right in. All right.
Great. So we had 3 full minutes to think about what we just learned in terms of the 6Ds and some of what was shared. So let's open up the chat and let's debrief a little bit. How did that feel for you? Did anyone try or do anything that perhaps felt different, something that you usually wouldn't do. Seeing some people say start a sing-along, more start singing, walk away. We had a few people talk about making jokes, so we're talking about distraction, walking away, creating some space. Some people talking about ignoring.
Some people are giving away cookies. What a great idea.
Giving away cookies, chanting louder, chanting over them. A lot of people talking about using music, smiles.
Play the tuba. So I think playing the tuba could be fun. It is probably not something you're going to do as a peacekeeper or a marshal. I do recommend, I think a lot of this, I see a lot of comments in here about being afraid that you can't, stay calm or that you like to yell. I do think it's really important for people to understand that there are many roles to make all of this happen. And if you're signed up to be a peacekeeper or a marshal, you do have a particular role to play. We're going to go over that in just a minute. And what else? And there's a lot of other stuff in here. Yeah.
Yes, giving away free stickers. Ask them what their name is and if they can take a walk. So some people saying, okay, we can perhaps connect and or take them away, complimenting them on their passion. Some people are talking about letting a host know, right? If it really escalates, so thinking about sort of the tier of communication that you have. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, I think this is great. And people are introducing themselves. I mean, one of the first things is figuring out what kind of relationship you're going to have with, even if it's for only 30 seconds or a minute. And introducing yourself, offering water, all that stuff is
We're
great.
talking about, bringing in and or alerting other marshals so you have a team, which is right. Set
Yeah, all right.
expectations early for the whole event. That is really important. We're going to get into that when we talk about action guidelines.
I think we should go there. What do you say? Let's go to the next slide, actually, and maybe we can close the chat for a minute and review some of this, right? I don't think we can encourage it enough. So please do visit the resources that are offered in the workbook for peacekeepers and marshals. There's some really great things there. It's very clear that there are do's and don'ts for peacekeepers and marshals. The most important thing is that we are going to use our privilege, our bodies, our knowledge, our calmness to convey an understanding of what's happening and to protect each other together. We are going to, if whenever possible, ask people to work in pairs at least, or in teams of people. And hopefully you'll be able to see each other visually. And if you can't see the next team of people, then the next person who is your fellow marshal or peacekeeper, you'll be connected in a signal loop or some other way of communication. If you're in a huge event, there's often marshals or peacekeepers who are connected to other folks who are responsible for communications. They might even be on bicycles or on scooters so they can travel the length of a march or a rally quickly. So these are all kinds of roles that we might play. Our goals here are to be alert at all time, to know our own skills and our own limits. We are going to be conveying important information, right? Carry the instructions from the leaders, the facilitators of the event overall to the people who are attending, right? We should hopefully know what kind of support is available and know how to access it, whether there's legal support, medical support, people to deliver water. We are going to pay attention and respond to some of the circumstances that we just reviewed with hecklers or people who want to disrupt or instigators of all kinds. We also are going to think about the march as a whole and keep an eye out for problems that could arise and try to help keep the march unified, focused, calm, and disciplined so that we can actually carry out our mission, which is to speak about our dedication to a better future. And finally, the last do, we are going to help set the container for it. So we might be assigned a role on one perimeter or at the front of a march or at the back of a rally gathering, and we're going to help hold that. We're going to watch what happens. We're going to monitor for things that are coming in and things that are going out, people who are coming in and people who are going out, vehicles moving around. And if there is an injury, we are going to be the people who are able to communicate with those who could respond and help us deal with it appropriately. Want to do the don'ts, Nor?
So something, Nadine, that you alluded to before is, even with a great idea of having a tuba, be something that maybe a marshal brings in, you all should not necessarily have the time or the flexibility to switch into musician role, right? As a marshal, your role really is to keep an eye, as Nadine mentioned, on all of the moving parts. And that means even if you are in an instance where you have a heckler or you have somebody on your own side who is escalating, your role is to model the kind of response that you want to see from the rest of the action. You want it to be successful. You want it to be safe. So you are not panicking, right? You are really sort of tapping into that grounded assessment of where you are at and where your body's at and bringing that in to help calm everyone down. The other piece is you are not the police, you are not the police liaison. So ideally, if you have already communicated with your hosts and or a hostess on this call, your team for an action involves many, many different types of people. And a police liaison has a very distinct role that is different from a marshal, right? The police liaison is the only person who is communicating with law enforcement. And the police liaison might communicate back with you as marshals to let you know, hey, the police would really want us to clear this part of the sidewalk, and or there's too many people that are flooding into the streets and they're a little bit worried about traffic. That is the police liaison's job to communicate back to you, and it is your role as a marshal to keep an eye and ear out to receive that communication and adjust your marshal plan accordingly. You also want to think about sort of escalating or instigating with the police themselves. That is not your role. Your role really is to keep an eye out for when other people are doing that, right? So that you can deal with it appropriately. You also want to think about how you interact with law enforcement. No matter how you might feel about law enforcement being present, they might have a really cute dog, they might have a car that you are leaning up against. You do not want to interact with them. You do not want to touch the police. You do not want to touch anything that they have on their body, their cars, horses, dog, bike, anything that is related to them as well. And then finally, we touched on this a little bit, which is don't go it alone. Right. So even if you are showing up to this rally as a peacekeeper or marshal, you have not met anyone before, break the ice. When you're getting there that morning, identify other people who are marshals, tell them your name, tell them why you're there, and know where they're at so that you can bring them with you to delegate, to distract together, and to really move as a smooth team. So those are some of the don'ts and a little bit of the do's again. Nadine, is there anything that we missed or any other flourishes that you would add?
I think we should keep going. We have a lot of resources to cover in the last few minutes, and there's a lot of great resources printed up in the Peacekeeper workbook. So let's go to the next slide. We also want to really emphasize that there are action guidelines, and using these action guidelines can help make a much more effective action and help us relate to people in a way that builds our community appropriately. So really quickly, we'll go over them. There's 9 of them, so we'll be pretty quick about them. Well, maybe Nora and I will throw it back and forth so you can hear both of our voices, but I'll do the first one. We exercise our right to assemble peacefully in public spaces. And that means that we know.
No.
Oops, what?
Nope, go ahead. I know you're adding more to that one. Go for it.
I'm just going to add that this means that we know our rights and we can assert them respectfully. You got the second one.
Great. We remain calm, grounded, and composed. And what that means is that we lead with courage and model peaceful presence.
We use de-escalation and mutual support to keep our community safe. It means we intervene nonviolently and we support one another to reduce harm and prioritize safety over confrontation.
We amplify the message, not the mess. We stay focused on the cause, avoid property damage, undermine the movement.
We support higher risk participants, meaning included in this is undocumented folks, trans and queer folks, BIPOC, disabled people, and others who may face greater risks. Let's go to the next slide.
We respect the safety, privacy, and consent of everyone. Before photographing or live streaming others, especially higher risk individuals, we get their consent.
Great. We will document misconduct by law enforcement or others whenever it's safe to do so. We're going to use our tools like video, photos, or even written notes, right, to record violations responsibly.
We prepare ourselves and each other, know the route, meeting points, legal support numbers, and exit plans. Share this information within your group.
We take care of ourselves before, during, and after the protest. It means that rest, reflection, and reconnection is important. Community care is part of the work that we do together. So those are also available to you, and they really form a very solid working foundation for what we do. Let's go to the next slide. We're going to run through a whole bunch of stuff pretty quickly. We have already mentioned there is a Peacekeeper training workbook. Here is a handout example from that workbook of things we've basically already reviewed, but it will list things like what you should bring, which includes a small backpack possibly with water in it. Maybe if the weather's going to be interesting, you might dress in layers. You might bring a raincoat. If you need sunblock, you've got sunblock in your backpack, etc. Things like that. And of course, it would be helpful if you were rested, well-fed, comfortable in advance of the shift that you're doing. You can find all kinds of other information like this in the Peacekeeper training workbook. Excellent. Should we do this quickly?
Yeah, let's do this and we can perhaps send the salute after. So on-site quick scan, we touched a little bit on sort of the self-assessment, starting off with the P, personal. How are you feeling in that moment? Are you hydrated? Do you need a bathroom? Are you reminded of your purpose? Some of which we touched on earlier in this training. The second P, people. Who am I with? How are they doing? Who do you see around you? Do you have an eye on where the police are, where other authorities are? What are they doing? Who do they have with them? How are they acting in that moment? Does it seem like they're about to do something that is different, right? 3, place. We just talked about this, but knowing where you're at and knowing how you get there, how you get out, what is the closest bus route, what is the closest subway that you could take, where is your car parked, how do you get out of there? Knowing all of those things is incredibly important. Asking yourself these questions and having those answers before you head in is really critical. You want to think about props. What kind of support is there, right? Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, hand signals. There's lots of ways that your teams can communicate with each other. Marshals may be identified in a way that is really clear. You also want to think about how you are giving sort of urgent alerts, how you're hearing perhaps from other people on different teams. You could also think about signage, tall flags, other ways to make yourself seen in a crowd. And then finally, you also want to think about, of course, planning. So how, especially if you're somebody who is in charge, what do you have in terms of having answers to all of these, and how are you communicating that back to other people in a way that is accessible and transparent and legible? That is a quick scan.
Quick scan. So let's keep going. Again, we have a lot of resources. We'll share them with you, but this is about spreading good information, making sure that you are accurately telling people what you know and see and not spreading bad information. In this particular instance, you can stay there. What to do if ICE agents show up. There's more information in the Peacekeepers booklet, but the most important thing is to stay calm. Don't run, document what you can. Do not hand over information. No, this is all knowing your rights. Don't answer questions that they ask. And as with anything, whether it's police or ICE agents, any authorities, you should send them to talk to your police liaison or those who are coordinating the action. And you should focus on your job as a marshal or a peacekeeper. Let's go one more slide and run through this. These are more resources that are available to you, the bigger picture of other roles that might be as part of your team of people who are helping host the event, and other information about how to prepare and show up in the best way possible. So let's go to the next slide. I'll keep going. Yep, we've done that one. Here's the really important things for you on other resources. There's still day of support. You can email. There's day of security support, and use it judiciously, right? There's a lot of us and a small security support team. There's an email and a phone number. There's lots of guidance in the toolkit. And of course, there's more guidance in the Peacekeeper workbook. And there is a de-escalation training recording about planning that is similar to this, but has more information on it. And then there will be a recording from this as well. So I think we're up to the point where we should actually do some Q&A with the remaining few moments. And we invite you to stop the screen share and have Nora come back. Yeah.
Okay, hey everybody. Wow, I was finding myself. Sure, I'll come join you all on the screen again. Hey everybody. You know what? Actually, I'm just gonna real quick turn these emoji reactions back on. If we can give some love to Nadine and Noor for that content. Now would be a great time for that. Yeah, just thank you all so much. We only have a couple of minutes, so I'm just gonna hit a few things that have come up a few times. One is if somebody's having their event blow up, they're like, oh my God, suddenly we have hundreds of people responded. People are asking things like, how many marshals should I have? Is there sort of a ratio way to think about that? Or if I'm in a last minute place, what are ways to go about most effectively trying to recruit marshals? I maybe have a couple thoughts about that in terms of like how to frame what that role is like for people, but would love yours.
I mean, the easiest thing to do if you show up on site and you feel completely overwhelmed by the numbers, first of all, congratulations. And second of all, you can use the people that are trained to buddy up with others. So make sure one person who is trained or feels comfortable, maybe they've been trained prior or some other time, bring on somebody else and walk with them and try to train people up as you go. There's no definitive number, but if you can see people, that's great. Or you want to figure out how to be in a signal loop or some other thread so you can communicate, that's really helpful. And also, you could actually take a few people aside and try to do a quick grounding and bouncing and sharing of information. You might bring a few handouts from the workbook or some of the things that we shared tonight so that somebody could read it there or have the link ready so that people could actually skill up right on site.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm just going rapid fire because we're actually sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to cut you off, Nora.
No. Nora, go for the next question.
Just trying to hit the things that we can hit as fast as possible given limited time. Best way for safety teams to communicate on site. My thought is signal, but just want to run that. I mean, obviously phone service can go down and stuff like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Signal is always the best bet. Think about who you have in that. You might, again, something that we've talked about is also just thinking about the space that you're in. So if you have marshals that are stationed at different parts, you might have one, lead marshal on the thread who is perhaps in charge of the perimeter. You might have somebody who is stationed closer to the stage. So you also want to think about tiering those people out so that critical people have ways to communicate with each other outside of Signal as well, like an old-fashioned phone call, right? So there's other ways that you could keep the communication going.
Yeah, or a flag even.
Love that. And real quick to the backend team, thank you so much, Jules and Carly and folks. If y'all just want to start dropping the repeat of links as we're going through this so that folks can grab that one more time in the chat. Some folks were asking, like, should they show up wearing something in particular as a marshal?
Generally, we expect that people will have either armbands or vests that will be provided by your team. I would recommend not wearing provocative things. And I mean politically provocative or other things. You should wear something that's going to be comfortable in the weather that you're in and in case you have to move in any way particular.
Beautiful. I'll just take one real quick. The sort of this viral thing about sitting down. A number of folks asked about this thing that's been going around about if something starts happening, everybody just sit down. Just want to state loud and clear. There may be times at an action where a specific local contextualized decision is made for people to sit down. but there is no, on June 14th and in general, there is not some sort of blanket, people are supposed to sit down guidance. So if you're seeing that, it's a thing that's going around. It is not strategic or tactical guidance on the part of this coalition and event movement.
Right. So definitely as a marshal or peacekeeper, you should be in a communication loop and you should have information from a tactical team or the event lead on whether or not it's appropriate to do something. You can't tell people just to do it.
Right. And on that note, the last thing I would say, just this goes back to thinking about communication is thinking about what's hearsay versus what is communicated. If you're suddenly hearing the crowd say, hey, let's turn left down the street instead of right, when you know that that's what the route is, take a second, see who other who's around you, who is also a marshal who you know, and if you are not able to confirm that, get in touch with your lead, right? So that communication and active listening is really critical.
Beautiful. I'm just going to do two more. One is the general topic of open carry states or places where people might be open carrying, both from protesters showing up to support No Kings, choosing that they want to open carry, or the possibility of a counter protester showing up open carrying. Obviously, those are two very different scenarios, but in this moment, I'm grouping them.
Yeah, I mean, open carry in an open carry state, you're going to have to really watch how people are showing up. Are they aggravated? Are they wearing a t-shirt that says indivisible on it? Are they, you're going to really, it's going to be subjective. You can potentially, if you have a permit for a place and you have the right to define what happens, you might put up a sign, no weapons allowed, and you might be able to ask for people not to bring weapons into a certain space. That is not going to always be your ability to do. You're not going to always be able to do that. So mostly it's going to be watching people. If there is somebody aggravated, whether it's a gun, whether it's a knife, whether it's a broken bottle, please have in place a team that can assess the most appropriate thing to do, whether it's move people away to safety, isolate the person, think about what's around you that you can use, and potentially, I mean, this is a question, whether or not you turn them over to authorities or be in touch with authorities who are most likely also watching or monitoring that person or those people. So it'll be really important to monitor. All people who show up with guns are not going to be our enemies, and everybody who shows up with one is not going to be at an elevated risk for using their weapon. However, they might be, if you can tell, or if you watch them carefully, you might assign someone to keep an eye on them. The authorities often will do that as well.
Okay, thanks, y'all. And you know what? Since we're at 5 after, I think just the one thing I want to wrap up with, a bit of a comment, but maybe I'll have things. So there's a number of people who came tonight who are not formally signed up to be marshals at their events, but they were interested in getting trained as marshals and sort of have that openness, and want to know how to show up best on these events. Given that it's Wednesday, the event is on Saturday, I guess it's unlikely that folks are going to be able to get looped in and tapped into marshaling groups. If you're in touch with the people planning your event and that's a pathway of communication that's open, I think offering that is a great thing to do at this juncture. That said, would you all agree that there's a lot of value in folks just showing up with these tactics and strategies in mind and being ready to be a supportive, peaceful presence? Any further thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, if you are somebody who has an armband or a vest and you're plugged into a team, excellent. But everybody who is on this call can absolutely de-escalate and support people who are formally marshals and or participating in the action. Everybody who's there can absolutely deploy one of the 60s or all of them or anything else to help keep this event successful and to make it powerful for everybody.
And bring your friends. Show up with a buddy, train them, and bring them too.
Great. Love it. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. We will be sending out all the follow-up materials to everyone who registered and attended tomorrow. And thank you so much for everything you're doing. One more shout out to Nadine and Noor and all the folks who were here earlier in the night. Thank you all so much. We'll see you out there.
Thank you, Nora, Mary, Eunice, Carly, and all the crew.
Thanks, y'all. Good night.